Also a former refugee who came to the U.S. as a kid. But if you are in service provision, it's important for you to incorporate mental health or trauma responsive support into the work that you're doing. Period. I was a teenager who lost almost everything and then came to a new place with new challenges. But I realized that no one was really asking what I felt, internally, what I was going through as a kid. So there's a difference. Mental health we all have. If you have a brain and you're human, which we all are, we do have mental health. It's our job to maintain that it's good.
Welcome on Word Out Community Channel. The show that actually promotes storytelling, amplifying leaders who are making much positive impact in the lives of our communities for refugees and immigrants. Today we are in Detroit, Michigan, attending a conference called Welcoming Interactive, and I've actually met very wonderful and amazing individuals who are really doing great work. Today on my show, I have a guest that I've respected, who inspires most of us from where we are coming from and where we are right now. You're most welcome on my show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. My name is Aisha Koroma. I am a licensed psychotherapist, but also a former refugee who came to the U.S. as a kid.
Wow, you came to U.S. when?
In the year 2000, actually.
2000?
2000, yes.
You came when? You're 3 years old?
No. That's a great compliment. Oh. I was 13 going 14. Years. Yes.
Wow. How was that coming when you were 14 years? How was it? How life was it?
It was a very interesting period. I was a teenager who lost almost everything and then came to a new place with new challenges. So there was a lot happening, with me as a teenager, but also as a child that experienced war.
And what was the challenges when you came here during that time when you were still young?
Navigating systems, especially school systems. When we fled my country, which is Sierra Leone, we went to Senegal. Senegal has a French schooling system. Sierra Leone has an English. My last report card was in English in Sierra Leone. So when we came to the U.S., they did not take my French report card, which would have placed me in 8th grade, but and then took the one from Sierra Leone, which placed me in the 6th grade. So there was a lot of battle there in terms of what I need to do for school. What grade am I in? Is it English? Is it French? Is my English good enough for school in America, even though I spoke English, but just with a British accent?
Remind me where you come from again?
Sierra Leone.
Sierra Leone.
Yes.
That's very hard to pronounce. That's located
Sierra
in Africa.
Leone.
Sierra Leone. Okay, so right now, where are you based in the United States?
In the U.S., my family is in Texas. I moved to Silver Spring area for work. So I go between 3 cities, D.C., Silver Spring, and Houston, Texas.
Speaking of work, what is your work?
So there are different layers to that. I think for the purpose of this conversation, I would say my work is a psychotherapist who runs my own private practice called the AK Center for Wellbeing, but also as a community advocate for mental health that has a project called the Safe Space Project. But I do wear many hats, and there are other things that I do for work that I think would apply in other settings, but for this conversation, those two.
Okay, so speaking of your work, as you say, therapy?
Yes.
Right? That's like mental health.
Correct.
Right. What drives you to do what you're doing with mental health?
So as I shared earlier, when I came to the U.S., there were a lot of challenges that we face. I was a teenager who was navigating new systems, but I realized that no one was really asking what I felt, internally, what I was going through as a kid. So I kind of pivot in my career to go into the field of mental health to make sure that refugee communities do have representation in the field, so people feel comfortable talking to people that share similar experiences but also have the expertise to do it.
Working with refugees and immigrants, have you experienced barriers that limit most of refugees to access mental health?
Absolutely. I think in general with mental health itself, there's so many layers. Number one is stigma. We know it's important, but we don't want to talk about it. But add in the refugee component, multicultural component, language, challenges also there. And people not knowing who to trust to talk to, that also comes to play. Most of it comes from community where your problem is within your family. You don't really share it out. And here we are saying, hey, if something is bothering you, talk to someone. That's different time. That's new, and that's a challenge for many people coming to the U.S. So what I try to do is make sure that I create a space where people feel comfortable, show up however they choose to show up. If I need to get an interpreter, I make sure that it's not just someone that speaks the language, but understand the culture. In many of our culture, the world mental health may translate to something really negative. I don't want to use the word, it's a C word that I don't want to use, but in many of our culture, when someone says, hey, I may be having challenges in mental health, they automatically call them that. So I make sure that I have interpreters that understand these cultural nuances, so they're not just translating everything I'm saying, they're taking into consideration the cultural context as well. I think also people feel comfortable speaking to someone who have shared experiences. My experience is not their experience, but I understand some of their, their struggles because I've walked some of those paths. Even though it's not the same, I'm very familiar with them.
That's cool. Do you think with the current environment that we are living in right now, based on the current administration, can you range the mental health of now most of refugees or undocumented individuals at this moment? What do you think the range of mental health right now?
I think at a global scale, it's probably almost at the highest because there's a lot happening around the world, not just in the U.S. And again, I don't want to pinpoint this into political sides, but there's a lot going on right now. There's a lot of civil unrest internally with all of us, whether you're a refugee or just an everyday American who's trying to put food on the table that's not able to afford that, whose paycheck is not enough for you to take care of your family. All of these things cause stresses. And I know when we talk about mental health, people go into mental illnesses, but mental health itself, right, is something that we all have. It's how we deal with things in our lives. It's how we deal with fear when we're afraid. It's how we deal with sadness. It's just how we cope on a normal basis. If someone was to, step on my toes, how I react, to that person depends on where I am in my mental health state, right? Yeah. Am I in good standing with my own mental health, or are there some challenges? So how I express myself into the world has a lot to do with how my mental health is in general. Mental health and mental illness are not the same. I do want to make that clear. Yes. Okay. When a challenge, happens and it escalates and it's not taken care of, it may transition into something that is diagnosed as a mental illness.
It's good to know those two different.
So there's a difference. Mental health we all have. If you have a brain and you're human, which we all are, we do have mental health. Okay. It's our job to maintain that it's good.
How important it is for refugees to come out and address this? What do you think we should do to inspire refugees and immigrants to come out and address this, so that we can support them or can get support?
For many of us in the refugee communities, we've been through a lot, whether it's loss of family members or just leaving your home in general. These are real challenges that impact who we are as individuals, but also our overall mental well-being. It's important for you to acknowledge that something happened to you, and it's okay that you get support. And in some cases, it means you're not sleeping, or you're not able to go to work or fully function. Or just really navigate, the systems in the U.S., not because you don't understand, because it's hard for you to understand with all these other challenges that you're going through internally. So if I was to have a message for all of us, myself included, is you owe it to yourself to care for your mental well-being. We cannot be contributing members of society if we're not okay, if we're not healthy, if we're not safe. We take care of our hearts, we take care of our all body parts. I'm saying let's also take care of our brains.
That's a perfect message too. So what are advice or the one word to all those refugee settlement or any associated organizations, what advice could you give to them when it comes to mental health or trauma? Is there a difference between mental health and trauma?
Well, we can go into some of the details at some point. But if you are in service provision, it's important for you to incorporate mental health or trauma responsive support into the work that you're doing. You're supporting people that come here with histories, with a lot of challenges. If we just focus on the services, then we're not really truly focusing on the person. We're focusing on the problems or challenges surrounding that person. Trauma, I know a lot of times people get confused. So mental health is one thing, or we all have. Trauma is kind of like a reaction or something that we live with based on experience. So, for example, if I get into a car accident, the car accident is not the trauma. What happens to me because of that car accident becomes a trauma. Maybe now I'm afraid to drive. Maybe I'm afraid to sit in a car in general. So it's based on what happened to you, having to live with that experience, that then becomes a trauma to a lot of people. And for some of us, it's experiencing war. So it's not necessarily the war, but it's the impact of the war itself.
Just in a few minutes, I've learned something that I've never known. I deal with this work every day, but I can't differentiate between trauma and mental health. Again, and mental illness. These are like three segments that we all use, but maybe we use it wrongly or in the wrong context. But now we have got the breakdown of what actually trauma mean, mental, and also illness. So thank you very much.
Well,
Any one word to my audience as we close this session?
Please take care of yourself. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to your family, your community. You owe it to the strength that you have. You've been through so much. You made it here. Whether you lived in a camp or host families, whether you cross borders, you've been through so much. You owe it to yourself to take as much help as people are offering, and which could include support for mental health services. Take care of yourself because you owe it to yourself.
Thank you very much. You're good at this.